The active shooter drill had become routine at Jefferson High until the day it wasn't a drill. At 2:47 p.m., 17-year-old Marcus Williams was discussing play formations with Coach Sullivan when the real lockdown alarm shattered their conversation. Most teachers would have followed protocol, lock the door, turn off the lights, and wait for help. But Mike Sullivan wasn't most teachers. In the next 4 minutes, his students would discover that their football coach had earned his leadership skills in places where hesitation meant death. Every story you're about to hear was earned, not given. This one belongs to Mike Sullivan, a man whose expertise was earned through 12 years as a Navy SEAL team leader, where protecting your unit wasn't about winning games, it was about bringing everyone home alive. Welcome to Earned Stories. Before we share this tale of earned courage and protective instincts, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve recognition, hit that subscribe button, because every story we tell here was earned through sacrifice, dedication, and the understanding that some people are born to protect others. Jefferson High School's football program had been transformed over 8 years under one man's leadership. Coach Mike Sullivan had taken a struggling team with a losing record and built them into 3-time state champions. But his success wasn't measured in trophies. It was measured in the young men who left his program with discipline, confidence, and an understanding of what it meant to be part of something bigger than themselves. Mike earned his reputation through a coaching style that seemed almost supernatural in its effectiveness. He never raised his voice, never lost his temper, never resorted to intimidation. Instead, he commanded respect through calm authority that made players want to excel not for fear of punishment, but for the privilege of not disappointing someone they trusted. Coach Sullivan sees everything, was how Marcus Williams, team captain, described him to new players. You can't hide anything from him, but he doesn't use what he sees against you. He uses it to help you become better. What Marcus didn't know was that Mike's ability to read people, assess situations, and maintain calm under pressure had been earned through 12 years as a Navy SEAL team leader, where those skills meant the difference between successful missions and team casualties. Mike's daily routine reflected habits most people wouldn't recognize. He arrived at school 45 minutes early, not to prepare lesson plans, but to conduct what he privately called a security assessment, checking entrances, monitoring unusual activities, noting changes in student behavior that might indicate problems developing. His office was organized with military precision, but what looked like typical coaching materials served dual purposes. The whiteboard where he drew plays could quickly become a tactical planning board. The first aid kit was stocked beyond normal requirements. The emergency protocols he'd helped develop went far beyond standard school safety measures. During practice, Mike's coaching methods revealed training most high school athletes would never encounter. His conditioning drills built not just physical strength, but mental resilience. His team-building exercises taught communication under pressure, quick decision-making, and the kind of unit cohesion that only comes from understanding your teammates' lives depend on your performance. We don't just play football, Mike would tell his players. We learn to function as a unit where every person matters. Every role is critical, and leaving someone behind isn't an option. What his players interpreted as exceptional coaching philosophy was actually leadership principles earned through SEAL team operations where unit cohesion meant survival. Marcus Williams was more than just team captain. He was the kind of young man who justified Mike's transition from military service to education. Smart, natural leader, but carrying the weight of being the first in his family to have a real shot at college. Mike had spent 2 years helping Marcus understand that leadership wasn't about being the strongest or loudest, but about making everyone around you better. Coach Sullivan changed my life, Marcus would tell college recruiters. He taught me that being a leader means taking responsibility for everyone on your team, not just yourself. What Marcus didn't know was that Mike saw something familiar in him, the same protective instincts and natural leadership that made good SEAL operators. Mike had been quietly preparing Marcus for challenges that went beyond football. There was Jennifer Chen, honor student who joined as team manager because she wanted to understand what made championship teams work. Mike had recognized her analytical mind and had been teaching her to see patterns, assess weaknesses, and develop strategic thinking that would serve her in whatever career she chose. David Rodriguez, the defensive lineman who'd overcome a troubled background through the discipline Mike taught. Mike had seen potential where others saw problems, providing the structure and mentorship that had redirected David's life toward productive goals. These weren't just students Mike coached. They were young people he'd invested in, protected and prepared for futures they were still discovering. And on October 15th, when danger entered their school, Mike's training would ensure they had the tools to survive. Mike understood something most educators never learn. Teaching young people wasn't just about academics or athletics. It was about preparing them for a world that could be dangerous, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Every lesson he taught, every drill he ran, every moment of discipline he instilled was preparation for challenges they might face when no one else was there to protect them. October 15th started like any other Wednesday. Mike arrived at 6:45 a.m., conducted his usual security assessment, and prepared for a day that included 3 classes, afternoon practice, and individual meetings with players who needed academic support. By 2:30 p.m., Mike was in his office with Marcus Williams, reviewing defensive formations for Friday's playoff game. Marcus was struggling with a particular coverage scheme, and Mike was using his whiteboard to break down the concept when everything changed. At 2:47 p.m., the lockdown alarm sounded. Most teachers at Jefferson High had heard this alarm monthly during drills. Long, continuous tone followed by announcement. Attention Jefferson High School. We are now in secure lockdown. All students and staff should immediately... But Mike Sullivan heard something different. This wasn't the scheduled drill tone. This was the emergency activation, the one that meant real danger, immediate threat, lives at risk. Mike's response was instantaneous and revealed training that had nothing to do with coaching high school football. While the announcement was still playing, Mike had already moved to his office door, positioned himself to observe the hallway while remaining concealed, and was conducting a threat assessment that drew on 12 years of experience in hostile environments. Marcus, still focused on the play diagram, looked confused. "Coach, is this another drill? We just had one last month." Mike's voice carried an authority Marcus had heard during championship games, but this was different, sharper, more focused. "Marcus, move away from the windows. Now, stay low, stay quiet." The tone made Marcus move immediately, without question. As he crouched beside Mike's desk, he saw something he'd never seen before. Coach Sullivan wasn't just following lockdown procedures. He was hunting. Mike's eyes scanned the hallway with systematic precision, his body positioned to move instantly in any direction. His hand reached for his cell phone, but instead of calling 911 like protocol suggested, he was accessing something else. Emergency contacts that weren't in any teacher manual. "Coach?" Marcus whispered. "What's?" Mike raised his hand for silence, and Marcus understood immediately that their lives might depend on staying quiet. Through his door's window, Mike saw other teachers following standard lockdown protocol. Doors locked, lights off, students hidden in corners away from windows. Textbook responses that worked for most threats. But Mike's experience told him this situation was developing beyond standard parameters. The gunshots started 30 seconds later. The sound of gunfire in a school building isn't like the movies. It's sharper, more chaotic, punctuated by screams and the metallic sound of doors slamming. To most people, it would have been terrifying, disorienting noise that paralyzed rational thought. To Mike Sullivan, it was tactical intelligence. His mind processed the information with skills earned through combat deployments. Single shooter based on firing rate and weapon signature, moving from the main entrance toward the administrative wing. Probably 9mm handgun based on sound characteristics. Objective appeared to be maximum casualties rather than specific targets. Mike's assessment took less than 10 seconds. His response revealed who he really was. "Marcus." Mike's voice was calm, but carried unmistakable command authority. "I need you to listen very carefully. What I'm about to tell you could save lives, including yours." Marcus looked at his coach and saw something he'd never seen before. The gentle educator who'd spent 2 years teaching him about leadership and responsibility was gone. In his place was someone harder, more focused, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. "There's a shooter in the building," Mike continued, moving to his equipment closet with purposeful efficiency. "The police response time to this location is 6 to 8 minutes. We don't have that long." Mike's equipment closet contained items that weren't standard for high school coaches. Behind the football gear was a tactical vest he'd kept just in case, emergency medical supplies that went beyond basic first aid, and communications equipment that could reach frequencies most civilians never used. "Coach, what are you doing?" Marcus whispered, watching Mike methodically prepare equipment with the kind of precision that suggested extensive training. "My job," Mike replied simply, "securing the tactical vest. But first, I'm going to make sure you're safe." Mike's office had been chosen specifically for its strategic advantages. Solid walls, single entrance that could be secured, and clear sight lines to monitor approach routes. But more importantly, it connected to the equipment room that had an exit most people didn't know existed. "Marcus, you're going to take this phone." Mike handed him a device that looked different from normal cell phones, "and you're going to go through that door to the equipment room. There's an exit that leads directly to the parking lot. You get outside, you find the police when they arrive, and you tell them there's a single shooter moving from main entrance toward administration and that Mike Sullivan is conducting interior operations." Marcus stared at the man who'd been his coach, his mentor, his example of what leadership looked like. "Coach, I'm not leaving you." Mike looked at this young man he'd spent 2 years preparing for challenges he'd hoped Marcus would never face. "Yes, you are, because that's what I trained you for. Leaders take care of their people first. Your job right now is to survive and get help. My job is to make sure other people have the same chance." Mike moved through Jefferson High's hallways with tactics that had been earned through house-to-house operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Every step was calculated, every corner approached with systematic caution, every movement designed to gather intelligence while avoiding detection. His first objective was reaching other classrooms where students and teachers were sheltering in place, hoping locked doors and hidden positions would keep them safe until help arrived. Mike knew from experience that hope wasn't a strategy. Room 247 contained Mrs. Peterson's English class, 22 students and 1 teacher who were following lockdown protocol perfectly. Mike used hand signals through the door window to communicate with Mrs. Peterson, then provided tactical guidance that could save lives if the shooter reached their hallway. Room 251 was Mr. Chen's mathematics class. Mike assessed their position, noted security vulnerabilities, and quickly repositioned desks to create better concealment and cover. His movements were efficient, silent, professional. The gunfire was getting closer, and Mike's tactical assessment was updating continuously. The shooter had moved through the main entrance, cleared the administrative wing, and was now advancing toward the classroom areas where most students were sheltering. Mike's 12 years as a SEAL team leader had taught him that in hostage situations, time favored the threat. Every minute the shooter remained mobile was another minute for casualties to mount. The optimal response wasn't defense, it was controlled offense that eliminated the threat while protecting innocence. Mike positioned himself in the main hallway intersection, where he could observe the shooter's most likely approach routes. His tactical vest provided some protection, but his primary advantages were training, experience, and the kind of situational awareness that had kept him alive through multiple combat deployments. When the shooter appeared, Mike saw everything tactical training had taught him to notice: weapon type, ammunition capacity, movement patterns, stress indicators that revealed limited training and high emotional state. The shooter was dangerous because he was armed and desperate, but vulnerable because he lacked professional preparation. Mike's approach used principles learned through SEAL team operations: overwhelming tactical advantage applied at the moment of maximum vulnerability. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. When it was over, the threat was neutralized, the weapon secured, and Jefferson High School was safe. Jefferson County Sheriff's Department arrived at 2:54 p.m., 7 minutes after the initial 911 calls. They expected to find an active shooter situation requiring tactical response, complex coordination, and possibly multiple casualties. Instead, they found Mike Sullivan sitting calmly in the main hallway, monitoring a secured suspect, providing first aid to minor injuries, and maintaining communication with students and teachers who were still sheltering in place. "Sir," said Sergeant Maria Rodriguez, the first responding officer, "what's your background?" Mike looked at this professional law enforcement officer and made a decision about how much to reveal. "Navy SEAL, 12 years, team leader for 7 years. Sergeant Rodriguez nodded slowly, understanding immediately why the situation had been resolved so efficiently. "Students, all safe, suspect secured, no serious injuries." Mike paused. "I've got 22 students in room 247 who need to see uniformed officers so they know it's over. Room 251 has 17 more. They've been through enough." By 4 p.m., word of the incident had spread through Jefferson's small community. Mike Sullivan, the quiet football coach who'd built champions through discipline and leadership, had stopped a school shooting using skills no one knew he possessed. But it was Marcus Williams who helped the community understand what they'd really witnessed. "Coach Sullivan saved our lives," Marcus told the gathered media. "But that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that he's been preparing us for this our whole time. Every lesson about teamwork, every drill about staying calm under pressure, every time he taught us that our job is to take take care of each other, he was teaching us how to survive. Principal Janet Morrison, who had worked with Mike for 8 years, spoke to the deeper revelation. Mike never told us about his military background because he didn't think it was relevant to coaching high school football. But everything he taught these kids, discipline, leadership, protecting your teammates, those weren't just sports lessons. Those were life lessons from someone who understood what those values really mean. The school district offered Mike any position he wanted, including heading up security for all county schools. His response was characteristic. "I'm a football coach. These kids need someone who understands that teaching them to be good men is more important than teaching them to win games." 6 months after the incident, Mike returned to Jefferson High for the start of a new football season. His routine was exactly the same. Arrive early, assess security, prepare for a day of teaching young people lessons that extended far beyond athletics. But everything else had changed. Parents now understood that their children were being coached by someone whose expertise had been earned through experiences most people couldn't imagine. Students approached Mike with a different kind of respect, not fear, but recognition that their coach was someone whose approval had been earned through tests few people could pass. Marcus Williams, now playing college football on a full scholarship, returned to visit his former coach. "Coach," he said, "I understand now why you always taught us that being a leader means being responsible for everyone around you. You weren't just teaching us football, you were teaching us how to be men." Mike's response reflected the humility that had characterized his 8 years at Jefferson. "You already had it in you, Marcus. I just helped you recognize it." The conversation that followed revealed Mike's understanding of something most people never learn. Teaching young people isn't about transferring knowledge. It's about helping them discover capabilities they didn't know they possessed. "Coach," Marcus asked, "do you ever miss it? The SEAL teams?" Mike looked around the practice field where he'd spent 8 years teaching teenagers about discipline, teamwork, and protecting others. "I'm still serving, Marcus, just in a different way. Every young man who leaves this program understanding that his job is to protect people who can't protect themselves, that's a mission accomplished." 3 years later, Mike was still coaching at Jefferson High, still arriving early, still teaching lessons that went beyond football, still preparing young people for challenges they hoped they'd never face but might encounter anyway. The school had become one of the safest in the state, not because of security systems or protocols, but because it was led by someone whose commitment to protecting others had been earned through 12 years of defending his country and was now applied to defending the next generation. Mike understood something that civilian life rarely teaches. Service doesn't end when you change uniforms. It finds new expressions, new challenges, new opportunities to apply skills earned through sacrifice in service of people who need protection. Mike Sullivan's story was earned through 12 years as a Navy SEAL team leader, where protecting others wasn't just a job, it was a calling that continued long after the uniform came off. His greatest achievement wasn't stopping a school shooting in 60 seconds. It was 8 years of teaching young people that their highest purpose was taking care of each other. He never sought recognition because he'd already earned the only reward that mattered, the knowledge that his presence made other people safer, and his teaching helped young people become protectors rather than victims. So I ask you, what skills have you earned that could protect others? What expertise could you share that might prepare someone for challenges they don't yet know they'll face? Share your story in the comments. Tell us about someone whose earned expertise made your life safer or better. Because here at Earned Stories, we believe that the most valuable teaching happens quietly, consistently, by people whose extraordinary skills were earned in places most of us will never see. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who choose to use their earned expertise protecting the next generation, one lesson at a time. Thank you for watching. If this earned story moved you, subscribe to Earned Stories for more tales of earned service, and remember, every person protecting others deserves respect, but some have earned their expertise through experiences that remind us why courage, leadership, and sacrifice are more than just words. They're expressions of character forged through service to something greater than ourselves.